All right, welcome back, guys. I'm not in my basement today. How about that? I'm in your classroom today. And that's because I needed the whiteboard. I did some stuff on the small whiteboards last time. I tried a couple of videos with them in the basement. It just wasn't working out for the elasticity stuff and for some of the other stuff with perfect competition. So decided to move forward, and here we are. And so. Today we're talking about demand and supply. We're talking about some things with elasticity, the different types of elasticity, things like that. So let's go ahead and dive in with demand. Remember that the law of demand says that if the price goes up, the quantity demanded is going to go down. We have that inverse relationship. We're going to show that with our demand curve here, with coming straight down. Okay, and so that is demand. And so remember that buyers are going to be willing and able. So this is the reason that this is going to go down here, that buyers are going to, or consumers are willing and able to buy more units when the price falls. And they're willing and able to buy more units when the price is high. There's three reasons to this. There's the substitute effect. Remember, the substitute effect is going to be if the price is high and there's something else I can buy instead, I'm going to do that if it's a lower price. So if I am used to buying Diet Coke, okay, and the price really shoots up on that, maybe I'm going to buy the Diet Sam's Cola instead, okay? I'm going to substitute out, so I'm going to buy less of Diet Coke. There's also the income effect. If I have more money, I have the ability to buy more. And so if I don't have more money, I don't have the ability. So if my income stays stable, I can only buy so much on here, right? And so if the price is high, if they raise the price of something, I can't buy as much of it because my income hasn't changed, right? And then there's the law of diminishing marginal utility. Remember, the more of something that you get, the less you're going to want it. Okay, we talked about I think the cookies in class. If I give you a cookie, woohoo! If I give you a second cookie, woo! If I give you a third cookie, I'm starting to not feel so good. Eat an eighth cookie. Now we got a mess in the classroom. And so that's the law of diminishing marginal utility. Those are the three things that are really going to drive why the demand curve looks like it does. So then we need remember that the each point on our curve is quantity of demand. The curve itself is demand. And so if we're talking about demand changing, the whole curve is going to change. Remember, that's going to be due to one of our determinants of demand. We call them our shifters of demand in class. Those are going to be taste and preferences, number of consumers, price of related goods, not the price of our good, of a related good. And so that would be a substitute or a complement. We're looking at a change in income or a change in future expectations, okay? So remember, if we're gonna show a change in demand, we're gonna shift the whole curve. So if our demand is going up, we redraw it and we show with that arrow which way we're going. This might be something that you have to do in maybe an FRQ or something along those lines, okay? And so if we're showing that our demand has changed, it's going to go that way. Now, what if I said the quantity of demand is changing? If I say the quantity of demand is changing, all I'm going to do is I'm going to say we're going from here to here. We're just moving along the line, right? So that's going to be if our price of our product changed. That's what happened. Our price went up, so our quantity changed. But we're still on that line. Price doesn't shift the curve. Hope you remember that from last semester. You better, because it's really important. Okay? So, looking over my notes, I think that's everything I want to say on demand. Supply. Just almost all the stuff works the same way, okay? Supply is going to be a direct relationship though, okay? And so the law of supply says that if the price goes up, the quantity supplied is going to go up. I think we used the example of mowing my lawn. How many of you are going to want to come on and mow my lawn if I say I'll give you $1 for doing it? But how many people will come and do it if I say I'll give you $100 for doing it? How many people come and do it if I say I'll give you $1,000 each time you do it? Now you'll do it all the time. Maybe you'll do it for $1 the first time because maybe you think, oh, poor Mr. C, he's all fat and he probably can't even do it. But I'm not going to come and do it every week. Like, get off your butt and exercise and go and do your lawn, right? But if I'm offering $1,000, I'll do it every day if you want. Okay, you'll do it more. You're willing to supply your services more often, and so that's going to result in a upward sloping supply curve. So why is the market shaped like this? Well, higher prices give profit seekers, and that's what we all are, right? We all want more money. Profit seekers an incentive to produce more output, to be able to produce more goods, and the mowing of the lawn, more services, okay? So remember, same thing that we had before. There are 5 determinants of supply, just like there were 5 shifters, right? Just like there were 5 for demand. So we have the price of resources, so what's going in. So if we're making chairs, the lumber maybe, the number of producers, technology, government actions. So here we're talking about taxes. Taxes, our supply is going to go down because we're not able to, can't spend that money on lumber or whatever it is. We got to give it to the government. Or subsidies, they're giving us money, we can buy more now, okay? And then expectations of future profit, okay? So those are our 5, and those are going to shift our curve, and it's going to act the same way. If our supply has gone up, we've got a new curve, looks something like that, right? And remember, if we say quantity supplied, we're moving along the curve because price still doesn't shift the curve, okay? All right, my friends. That's what we've got for demand and supply. Let's go ahead and jump in then to price elasticity of demand. Remember, we said that if the price goes down, we're going to buy more of it, right? How much more, we don't know, right? That's what price elasticity of demand is going to tell us. That's what's going to predict these things. And so we want to first look at the formula for price elasticity of demand. And that formula is the percent change in quantity divided by the percent change in price, okay? Now, sometimes they're going to give you those percents, and that's great when they do that. Just think, oh, the angels are looking down on you, and that's a great day. But oftentimes they're going to give you the actual numbers. It went from $4 to $7, and we bought X many less, right? So when that happens, we need to extrapolate this out, and we need to figure out how do we find the percent change. Well, we're going to do that by taking our new quantity, so that's the newest one that we've had, minus our old quantity divided by our old quantity, our new price minus our old price over our old price. That's going to give us percent change in quantity. That's going to give us percent change in price. And that's what we need in order to complete what we're working on here. So with that in mind, there are 3 things that are going to predict whether something is inelastic, okay? Goods with inelastic demand are going to be necessities, okay? We need them. Gasoline. If you're going to get from point A to point B with a car, better have some gas in the car, right? Okay? They have few substitutes. You're putting sugar in your tank, like what else are you putting in your tank, right? There's electricity, but that's not going to move most of our cars, right? Okay, and so gasoline is going to be necessity. We don't have any substitutes for it. And then the coefficient of elasticity is going to be less than 1. Okay, now remember, when we do this, one of these 2 numbers is going to pop out as a positive, one's going to pop out as a negative. And that's always going to be the case because we know the law of demand says that we're going to have that inverse relationship, right? Because of that, this number is always going to be negative. What pops out of this equation is always going to be negative. We care about the magnitude of it, so we take the absolute value. So when I say less than 1, I'm really saying between 0 and negative 1, okay? And when I say more than 1, what I'm really saying is more than or less than negative 1, okay? So remember, we're just looking at the magnitude. We don't want to worry about the sign there, okay? So if a good is perfectly elastic, it's going to have a very flat, it's going to be completely flat, it's a horizontal line. And if a good is perfectly inelastic, it's going to have a vertical line. And so those respectively are going to be infinity for perfectly elastic, that's the coefficient, and 0 for a good that is perfectly elastic. Let's go ahead and jump in and do one of these problems. So I'm going to keep this formula up here, but I'm going to erase this one. What I want to do is I want to check out, so if the price of a good Y increases from $10 to $12. So our original price was $10. Our new price, though, is $12. If that happens, then our demand is going to decrease from 200 and it's going to go down to 150. Okay, so when I get the numbers, I can set it up like this, and now I've got everything that I need to be able to solve this. Now remember, I don't have the percents yet, so I've got to get those. So I've got to use that Q2 minus Q1. So Q2 is 150 minus Q1, 200, over Q1, which is 200. And then our denominator is going to do the same thing. 12 minus 10 over 10. So what we're going to have here, 150 minus 200 is going to be minus 50 over 200. And down here, we're going to have 12 minus 10 is 2 over 10. We reduce this down a little bit more. That's going to be negative 0.25. That's going to be 0.2. Negative 0.25 divided by 0.2 is going to be negative 1.25. And remember, we don't care about that. 1.25 is larger than 1. Therefore, this would be an elastic good. Okay? So that's just kind of a little something there that we can work with. Now, there's one last thing in price elasticity of demand that we care about here, and that is the total revenue test. Okay? The total revenue test. Remember, we did this in class where I had you stand up and put your hands straight up, you put your hands straight down, or have your hands kind of going in every direction here, okay? So if our total revenue has gone up and we've raised the price, we made an I, right? And so we must be inelastic. If our total revenue has gone down and our price has gone down as well, we are inelastic. We made an I. If our total revenue has gone up and our price has gone down, we're not making it. We're making some weird, we're landing airplanes or something, right? We are, at that point, elastic. And if our price has gone up and our total revenue has gone down, we are elastic. We're going in opposite directions, right? And so elastic, opposite directions. Inelastic is going to be the same direction, right? We remember that. You might not have to do the math because the AP exam might ask you, is this elastic, is this inelastic? And then just give you a little bit of information. You're going to be golden. Okay, now there are some other types of elasticity that we care about. One of them is price elasticity of supply. I'm going to spend about 1/8 of a second on this, okay? Because if you can do everything that we just did in 2.3, you've got 2.4 down. The one difference is going to be here that the percent change in quantity supplied divided by the percent change in price. Instead of the quantity demanded, we're using quantity supplied. Everything else in that formula, all the work that we did, the Q2 minus Q1, all that stuff that we did remains the exact same that we just were working on, okay? Now, there are a few things that are going to dictate whether it's inelastic or inelastic. The market has high barriers to entry. It's going to probably be inelastic. Remember, we talked about high barriers to entry. We talked about monopolies. A high price of alternative inputs. Okay. Remember, an input is the wood that's going in, or something like that. That's going to be then inelastic. And then, is it difficult or time consuming to produce? So if I'm making T-shirts where I can say, oh, I don't want to have this design, I want to have a different design, I can change like that, right? Very quick to change. If I'm making airplanes and now somebody wants a different style of airplane, I can't just say, okay, we'll spit those out, we'll have them for you tomorrow. It's going to take years to make all these airplanes, right? So it's going to be a difference, and that's going to be the more time consuming, the more inelastic it's going to be. Outside of that, the only other thing that I have listed here in 2.4 is be careful of the total revenue test. It only works for the demand. It does not work for supply. So it does not work for price elasticity of supply, only works for price elasticity of demand. There are two other types of elasticities that we do care about. One of them is cross price elasticity of demand. The other one is income elasticity. Price elasticity of, or cross price elasticity. Cross price is going to tell us if the price of that good goes up, what happens to our good. Okay, so they're going to compare things. So we talked earlier, one of the determinants of demand was the prices of related goods. So what if the price of Pepsi, what if that does change? What happens to our Coke here, right? Are we going to buy more or less of it? How much more are we going to buy? How much less are we going to buy? What we're going to look at here is we're going to be able to find out, first off, the formula is exactly the same. That's why I'm not even doing the math on this right now. It's the percent change in quantity of one good divided by the percent change in price of the other good. Okay, so that's all we're looking at here. Cross price elasticity of demand is going to tell me, are they complements or are they substitutes? Now remember, when we did price elasticity of demand, it was always a negative number, so we dropped the sign. When we did the price elasticity of supply, it was always a positive number, so we didn't care about the sign. For this one, we care. Okay, so you got to keep the sign all the way through. If it spits out as a negative number, then they're complements. If it spits out as a positive number, they are substitutes. Okay, now how do you remember this? How do I remember this? I don't always remember this off the top of my head. I can just run a quick test in my head. If the price of Pepsi goes up, am I going to buy more or less Coke? I'm going to buy less. I know that Pepsi and Coke are substitutes. They're going in opposite directions. Substitutes are, I said it backwards, didn't I? If the price of Pepsi goes up, I'm going to buy more Coke, right? And so they're going the same direction. So therefore, substitutes are positive. If I use mashed potatoes and gravy, if the price of potatoes goes up, I'm going to buy less gravy. That's on opposite directions. Complements have to be negative. Okay, so that's what I can tell from cross price elasticity of demand. I can also then use price, or I can use income elasticity of demand. And instead, I'm going to use the exact same formula again, percent change in quantity, but then the bottom, it just tweaked the tiniest bit, is going to be the the percent change. I'm having trouble with the words today. Percent change in income. And I'm talking about percent change in income. What I'm looking at here is the money is still in the denominator. So instead of price, it's income. Otherwise, it works the same way. And we keep the sign again here, okay? We keep the sign now because what's going to happen is if it's positive, that good is a normal good. What it means is when we get more money, we buy more of that good. If it's a negative, it's an inferior good. That means when we get more money, we buy less of that good. And so it's not as good. We're going to buy the better good, okay? And so one of the examples I give in class is going to be, if you can get a 60-inch TV for $89, you probably know it's not going to last very long. It's probably not going to be the best quality, right? But if that's all you can afford, that's maybe what you get, okay? But if you all of a sudden make a lot more money, you're going to maybe get that better TV that you know is going to last a long time. It's going to look a lot sharper and going to have maybe more features. And so you're going to buy less of that that inferior TV, buy the normal good. Okay, so that's income elasticity of demand. So we got 4. Price elasticity of demand, going to tell us how responsive we are to a change in price. Price elasticity of supply, same thing. How responsive are we to a change in price? Cross price elasticity, how responsive are we if something else changes? And then the last one, income elasticity, how responsive are we to a change in our income? Okay, so with all that said, the next thing that we're talking about is equilibrium. So if I draw a demand curve and a supply curve, that is our equilibrium price. Where they cross, we come over to our price. And that is our equilibrium quantity, okay? And so that's all that we care about right there. That where they cross is our equilibrium point. Any place else on this entire curve, this entire graph would be disequilibrium, Okay, so this point right there is equilibrium. So why do we care about that? Well, a couple reasons. First, consumer surplus. We can find that on this graph now. Consumer surplus is the difference between how much we're willing to pay and how much we actually pay. So if I walk into a car dealership and I'm willing to pay $10,000 for this car, but I wind up paying $8,000, their $2,000 is my surplus. That's what I was willing to pay that much more, but I didn't have to, so I get to keep that money. Okay. Producer surplus, we can also tell. Producer surplus, the most that they want to sell, the least they want to sell this car for is $5,000. They're willing to do it, okay, but they want to sell it for more than that. They're not going to take anything less than $5,000, but they sold it for $8,000. Their producer surplus is $3,000. Well, question is, who won? Well, nobody. Nobody won. Both teams won. However you want to say this, okay? Most people are going to say, well, the producer won because he got $3,000 of surplus, and the consumer is very happy, right? They wanted to spend, they were willing to spend $10,000, but didn't have to. They got $2,000 more in their pocket. They're thrilled. The producer, they were willing to sell it for $5,000, didn't have to. They sold it for $3,000. Everybody walked away happy with this deal, right? And so that's the idea that we're talking about here with consumer surplus and producer surplus. And we can find that here on our map. How about a graph instead? Okay, our consumer surplus is right here. We're going to start at our equilibrium, and we're going to come over to our price. We're going to come up to our demand curve, back down to our equilibrium. That triangle that we made there, that is our consumer equilibrium, okay? And our, how about consumer surplus? Our producer surplus, then, we're going to find the opposite way. It's right down here. We're going to find it in a similar manner. We're going to start at our equilibrium, come over to our price, down to our supply curve, and back up to our equilibrium. This is the equilibrium, I keep saying, this is the surplus. Now, on the AP exam, you may be asked to find out how much is that, okay? So let's say that up here, this is 15. Let's say that this is 10. And let's say that this is crossing at 5. Let's say that our quantity here is 50. Okay, how do we find this? Well, we want to just find the area of this triangle. How do you find the area of a triangle? It is 1/2 base times height, right? What's our base? 50. What's our height? 5. 250. And we want 1/2 of that. 125 is our consumer surplus. Okay? It's as simple as that, guys. Just don't let any of the math overwhelm you. Remember your formulas. This is something that we definitely want to walk through, is go through what are all of your formulas. We want to remember each of our formulas. And a lot of them build off of each other. So they really kind of are helpful in that way. One of the last things that we're going to do is I've got the remote review that we're going to be looking at all of those formulas and all of these graphs. Now, next thing with equilibrium is what happens if the government gets involved, okay? So we are right there. That blue marker is not working so well, so I'm going to go back over to the black one. So we're here, right? Okay. We have our price, we have our quantity, we've got our equilibrium. So here's our equilibrium price. Here's our equilibrium quantity. What happens if the government decides, man, that price is high, people can't afford this, but they need this product? What should they do? They should go ahead and say, well, let's make them lower the price. We're going to force them to lower the price. Okay. And so what we've got there is a price ceiling. The ceiling, remember, doesn't allow you to go any higher. So they're not going to allow the price to get to here. The price wants to be here, right? It wants to be at the equilibrium, but the government's not going to let it get there. So this is a price ceiling. And what's going to happen is when we produce that, we are going to be here. That's how many that the producers are going to supply. but we want it to be here. That's how many people want. So we got more people wanting it than the producers are gonna supply. So we get a shortage, okay? The opposite could also happen. The government might say, you know what? If we're operating here, there's not gonna be enough, okay? We want a surplus. We want more than enough. And so they're gonna say, let's have a price ceiling. Price floor. That means the price can't go below that. It can't get to there. We're often going to see this with food. We want farmers to produce food, but sometimes it's not going to feed them enough, right? It's not going to put enough food on their table. It's not going to give enough money to them. It's not incentivizing them. And so what's going to happen? The government says, well, let's just raise the price of it. Now the farmer's like, oh, if you're going to raise the price, I can certainly do this job now, right? And so they're going to raise that price. And so here's what's going to happen. First, we're going to have this is a price floor. And what's going to happen is, here's where we want to be at that price. We're going to buy this many. But producers are going to produce this many. So we're going to have more than we need. We're going to wind up with a surplus, okay? So that's going to be market disequilibrium, changes in equilibrium. This is what happens when the government's going to kind of get involved with this, okay? So the other thing that we care about with market disequilibrium and changes in equilibrium would be what happens when we have a shift in demand or a shift in supply. Let's check that out. So here's our base graph. We've got price and quantity. Here's our demand and supply. Here's our demand and supply. So we know what our equilibrium price is. We know what our equilibrium quantity is. Well, let's say all of a sudden our demand has shifted to the right. Incomes have gone up, right? So we have this new demand curve. Well, now we have a new equilibrium as well. And so what we can see is our price has gone up and our quantity has gone up, okay? This will be a great multiple choice question where they're not going to give you any graphs. They're going to say, hey, if this happens and this happens, is the price going to go up? Is the price going to go down? Draw it out. Always draw it out, okay? You're going to have tons of room in your booklet. Draw it out. You will always get it right if you draw it out. Show me what happened, and you're going to see, oh, the quantity went up. Oh, the quantity went down, okay? Always draw it out. Now, the one thing to remember then is I can shift the supply, I can shift the demand, okay? Either one of them. But what happens if we shift both at the same time? Okay, now what happened? We can't always tell, okay? We can't always tell what happened. So what we want to do is we want to draw it separately. What we said here was this was our price, this was our quantity, and we shifted, right? So both, that means our quantity or our demand went up, but our supply went down. So what we want to do, we said our demand went up. So we know our quantity went up and our price went up. Down here, whoops, drawing extra graphs in the middle of the graph, right? Down here, we're gonna do the same thing. But here, our supply went down, right? And so, here, our quantity went up, but our price went down. What's the same? Both of the quantities went up. We know the quantity went up. We don't know what happened to the price. We need the numbers to find out what happened to the price. So if you have a double shift, we're going to know what happened to one of them. We're not going to know what happened to the other one. Draw them separately. That's going to give us all the information that we need. Okay, that's where I want to end this video. I'm going to have a separate video on taxes and international trade. because I want to do some practice problems with those. And so I want to get those ready. But we're right at the 30-minute mark here, and that's as far as I want to go. So remember, if you've got any questions, come on in. We're going to take care of you. We're going to get the rest of this hopefully up today as well. And then hopefully be putting up the Unit 3 video in the next few days as well. My friends, I hope you have a great rest of your day. And remember to do something for someone else. We'll see you in class. Goodbye.